What's up, math scholars? Thanks for joining me for this 3.4 to 3.6 study guide video. I'm going to be out of the classroom today, so we'll get a good start on the video. I don't know if we'll finish today or maybe just get a start on it because the quiz is not till Wednesday and I'll be back tomorrow on Tuesday. Hopefully you can follow along and ask the substitute to hit pause if I get going too fast. And if you feel like you might get the giggles, Amelia, maybe you have to move seats. I miss you. All right, number one, a certain gas will escape from a storage tank according to the formula E equals 130 radical P, where E represents the amount escaping in cubic meters per minute at atmospheric pressure, and P represents the pressure in kilopascals. How much gas is escaping when the pressure is 550 kilopascals? So like any word problem, I think the hardest decision is just, is that 550 going to go in for E or is it going to go in for P? What do you guys think? If you said P, you're correct. So we're going to put that 550 in for P, and then this is actually just an easy problem that we can just type that in our calculator. So I'll get you a second to get your calculators out. And then just go ahead and type it in. I got 3,048.77, but it does say round your answer to the nearest whole number. So that is my answer, and I believe that technically would be labeled cubic meters per minute. Cubic meters per minute. All right. We are ready for number two. Solve the equation. On this one, it looks like we're probably going to start off by raising both sides to the third power, because that will make that third radical disappear. So we'll have 2x minus 8 equals whatever 4 to the third is, and that's 64. Next step would be to add your 8 on both sides. So you'll get 72 equals 2x. And then we finish it off by dividing by 2. X equals 36. All right, we did talk that day in class, we learned this lesson, that every so often extraneous solutions will arise anytime you take both sides to a certain exponent. So it is a good idea to check, especially if you're taking a quiz, just check your answers real quick. So let's just make sure that 2 times 36 minus 8 would give us the solution of 4. I'm going to type that in. I need my cube root button, so that would be math 4. 2 times 36 minus 8. Click enter. It did again give me 4. So it's a good practice just to check that real quick. All right, number 3 over here to the right. We're going to start this one off by squaring both sides. And that squared and that square root will end up canceling. So we'll have x plus 6 equals x squared. Now, anytime you're involving an x squared, it normally involves either factoring or the quadratic formula, but you have to have all the terms on one side together. So this is going to sound crazy, but I'm going to take these two terms that are on the left and get them both over on the right. And the reason I'm doing that is so I can keep that x squared a positive term. So I got x squared minus x minus 6. I got everything subtracted over to the right-hand side. All right, this is classic old-fashioned factoring technique. What numbers multiply to -6 that add up to -1? I'll give you a second to think about what you think those numbers are going to be. It's going to be a -3 and a +2. And that makes the solutions to this problem a +3 and a -2. Again, definitely good practice to check these answers, because I don't know, maybe one will be extraneous, maybe they'll both be extraneous, maybe they'll both be fine. We'll find out. So we're going to mix the top. We're going to put that 3 in for x. Is the square root of 3 plus 6 going to equal 3? Well, it's the square root of 9, and square root of 9 doesn't equal 3, so that's fine. Let's try the negative 2 plus 6, if that equals negative 2. Is the square root of negative 2 plus 6 going to be negative 2? And that's not true. The square root of a number will give you a positive 2, not a negative 2, so that answer is extraneous. And since the answer is extraneous, you don't include it on the answer line. Our only answer is x equals 3. All right, 4, 5, and 6, they're asking 2 questions apiece on both these graphs. When they ask you if you are looking at a function, that's when you would want to perform that vertical line test. And the vertical line test means you lay your pencil down vertically, kind of like so, and you make sure it's only crossing in one place everywhere you lay it down. So this one would definitely be passing that vertical line test, so it is a function. Now when they ask, will its inverse be a function, that's when you perform the horizontal line test. To perform the horizontal line test, you lay your pencil down horizontally, making sure it only touches at one place at any given time. And this would actually also pass the horizontal line test. So it is a function and its inverse will be a function. Let's look at number 5. Is this a function? Absolutely. It does pass the horizontal line test wherever I would lay that pencil down. And then will the inverse be a function? Yes, as well. It would pass the horizontal line test. If you don't recognize this graph, it's a square root graph. It looks like it's been shifted left 6 units. And then finally, parabolas. Parabolas are functions because they would pass the horizontal line test, but they would fail, I'm sorry, I said that wrong. They would pass the vertical line test, but they would fail the horizontal line test. Because my pencil would touch twice, almost everywhere I would lay it. All right, number 7, find the inverse. Do you guys remember the song that we sing for finding inverses? Switch the x and y, then resolve it. So just a reminder that f of x is actually your y in this situation. So if I'm going to perform my switch, I'm going to make my y an x and my x a y. So that's my switch the x and y step. My resolve step involves getting y by itself once again. So you're going to subtract your 5 from the right-hand side over to the left-hand side, giving you x minus 5 equals 6y, and finish it off by dividing by 6. So you can either leave it like that as x minus 5 over 6, or you can write it in slope-intercept form. That would end up looking like 1/6x minus 5/6. But in the end, you don't want to have that y there. You want to call it f inverse of x in your final answer. I'll just go ahead and put my box around this final answer. F inverse of x equals 1/6x minus 5/6. Number 8. We have to prove whether these are inverses or not. They might be, they might not be. So we are going to show if they're inverses by doing 2 things. We're going to do f of g of x, and then we're going to reverse it and do g of f of x. So that involves circling one of the functions, putting it inside the other one, and simplifying it all down. If it simplifies down to just a single x, then it would be an inverse. Let's start with our first one, f of g of x. We're going to circle g of x. We're going to draw our arrow, and we're going to put it in function f of x in place of x. So we are going to need parentheses, because the whole entire group, negative 3x minus 5, is being placed in for x. Now let's see what happens. 1/3 times negative 3x is negative x. 1/3 times negative 5 is negative 5/3. So it looks like we're going to have a whole bunch of problems here. It's not going to simplify out to just a single x, which is what we need. And since that's not happening, we can actually just abandon our mission and say no. F of x and g of x are not inverses. Now, if everything had simplified out, then we would have gone and done the other way, the g of f of x. Number 9, graph the function, state the domain range, and answer the shift questions. So I'm going to grab my big calculator because I want to talk to you one last time about just making sure your radical ends where it needs to end. Oh, don't want to do that. All right, so we're in our y equals. We're clearing out any old graph that we don't want anymore. We need our cube root button, which is math 4. And now it's very important that the x minus 4 be under the radical and the plus 3 not be under the radical. So make sure you click that right button to kind of end the radical. If you're using a TI-83, you're going to want to end the parentheses before you do that plus 3. All right, so hopefully you've got it inputted by now. Let's click graph and see what we've got. It's kind of like a sideways snake. So the domain and range is going to be a piece of cake. It'll be negative infinity to infinity for both domain and range, because snakes can travel all the way to the left, and all the way to the right, and all the way down, and all the way up. Domain is x and range is y. Just a reminder on that. You can remember that because x comes before x comes before y in the alphabet, and d comes before r in the alphabet. Other than that, let's look at our horizontal shift. Your horizontal shift is coming from the number under the radical, and the radical kind of makes it behave oppositely. So this is actually a 4-unit shift to the right, and then a 3-unit shift up. So it's kind of like you go to 4, 3 to kind of make your center point of the snake. Just trying to make my graph accurate where it crosses. How's that look? Pretty good. And now we get to fill out the table. So to do table, you hit second graph, so second table. If your table's messed up and you have decimals, you'll have to get into table setup to change that second window. But it looks like mine's okay. So I'm just going to jot down these values. It looks like a 1.087, so let's go with 1.09. And then 1.18, 1.29, 1.41, 1.56, just rounding to the nearest hundredth, 1.74, and finally 2. If you did have troubles with your graph, just please try a Zoom 6. Zoom 6 is always your best friend to kind of troubleshooting problems in graph world. Okay? Number 10. The velocity of sound in the air is given by the equation v equals 20 times the square root of 270 plus t. I don't like equations with t's, but we'll get through this. T's look like pluses, so just keep in mind that's a t at the end. Kind of curve the bottom of it. Where v is the velocity in meters per second, and t is the temperature in degrees Celsius. Find the temperature when the velocity of sound in the air is 260. All right, so again, our biggest decision is where we put in that 260. Is it a velocity or is it a temperature? Hopefully you agree with me that it is a velocity. So it's going to go over here for v. Looks like our job is going to be solving for t. All right, what do you think we should do first? I always like asking that. What do you think we should do first? Did you say divide by 20? That's what needs to happen first. That 20 needs to be gone to the other side. We're going to divide by 20 on both sides. That'll leave a radical 270 plus t on the right. 260 divided by 20 is going to be 13. All right, next up, we are going to square both sides. Squaring both sides will cancel that square root out. And 13 squared is 169. That squared cancels my square root, so I only have the 270 plus t at this point. And next up, subtract 270. Now sometimes I get nervous on word problems and I think, ooh, am I allowed to have a negative answer? But in this case I absolutely can because it's a temperature. I can have a negative temperature. So it's negative 101, and I believe that was in degrees Celsius for our temperature. All right. Next up is number 11. Looks like another graph question. Get my calculator back up. Let's clear out our old graph from the earlier problem. We're going to be doing a square root of x minus 4. Make sure, again, your minus 4 is not under the radical. Graph it and see what we're looking at. So it's definitely a square root graph, and that negative 4 at the end was our vertical shift. So we can go ahead and fill that out. It's a 4 downshift, and there is no horizontal shift. So we can put none. That horizontal shift, that number would be in the radical. We don't have one of those numbers in the radical. Let me get it drawn on my paper. And it comes up like so. All right, let's go domain next. Our domain is where the graph is allowed to travel on the x-axis. It looks like the furthest left it ever gets is 0, but then it travels towards infinity off to the right. So it's 0 through infinity. I'm putting that bracket on 0 because we do want to include 0. Our range is where our graph travels on the y-axis. It looks like the lowest it's ever going to go is negative 4, but then it's going to go up towards infinity. So we're going to use a bracket like that. To get into your table at a second graph, oh, we're going to have some errors. That's because it never travels down in the negative regions. So it's going to be an error for the first 3. At 0, we're down at negative 4, and then negative 3, and then negative 2.5, is that at 8? It's really hard to read my screen. Let's go negative 2.59. I hope that's accurate. And then negative 2.27. I did check on my handheld calculator, and that was accurate, negative 2.59. All right, so that was number 11. I think we are going to just go ahead and finish this today. We're at 18 minutes. We have time. Number 12 is the last problem. This is actually an ACT problem, review problem. The width of a rectangle is 3 inches longer than the length. It's always good to refresh geometry in your brains. You can't just forget about the whole entire class. The width of a rectangle is 3 inches longer than the length. Actually, probably drew that backwards from how you're picturing it. Most people picture the width this direction and the length this direction. The width is 3 inches longer than the length. Let's just call the length x, and then that would make the width x plus 3. 3 inches longer than the length. So I'm setting up my whole entire picture. The width is 3 inches longer than the length. Yep, I think that's our setup. Now a perimeter is 50. So how are you going to find a perimeter? You're going to add the whole way around. So it's going to be x plus 3 plus x plus x plus 3. Let me write out what I just said. X plus 3 plus x plus x plus 3. You can gather all your like terms. There's going to be 4 x's, and 3 plus 3 is 6, so that's going to be your setup. Solving this should be a breeze. Subtract your 6 first. Get 4x equals 44, and divide by 4 last, getting x equals 11. So that just means that your length is 11, and your width is 11 plus 3, so it's 14. And then just make sure you answer the question they're asking. They're saying find the length, so that would be our 11. Find the length. They would say find the width, then you'd answer the 14. Just read the question carefully. All right, thank you for joining me on the study guide video. We got that done pretty quick, right at 20 minutes right now. So there is no homework. You can take the rest of the time to study for another class, take a power nap, but be sure to behave yourselves and tell the substitute thank you. I'll see you again tomorrow. All right, bye.